Okay, good morning everyone. My name's Louise, for those of you that don't know me. I am an ex-science teacher. I taught for 7 years at secondary school in Broadstairs and then stopped teaching and have been doing private tutoring pretty much ever since. So we're going to do a little bit on cells this morning. So to start with, the first thing to consider is the fact that all living things are made of cells. Okay, some things are what we refer to as single-celled or unicellular. That means they're only made of one cell. Other things are what we call multicellular, and they're made of lots and lots of different cells. They tend to be much more complex organisms. We're going to have a quick look at both of these. Okay, these are not going to be long sessions. They're going to be 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, depending on how we go. If you've got any questions, chuck them in chat, and I will do my best to answer them. So to start with, looking at multicellular. Because you tend to find the cells are much more differentiated, they have different purposes. So hopefully you can see this. That's not showing very well. Let me just go over that. Okay. So what I have got here is two simplified cell diagrams. Now, as I say, they all do vary slightly. These are very, very generalised. Different cells do have different functions, and consequently they have slightly different features to them depending on what sort of cell. I might do a completely separate session on specialised cells probably next week one day, looking at the actual detailed differences between the various types of cell that you get. So just generally plant and animal cells. Now you'll notice that some of these, hopefully you can see, are drawn, some of the structures are drawn in green. Now cells have parts within them that are called subcellular structures, also known as organelles. And the general ones that you'll find in all of them are on here. Okay, so the green ones are only found in a plant cell. Only in a plant cell. Okay, you will not find these structures in an animal cell. Okay, so the first one we've got in green is right around the outside. We have the cell wall. And in plants, that's made of a substance called cellulose, which is a carbohydrate. We as humans actually have no way of breaking cellulose down. Some animals can, we can't. So that's basically there to give the cell structure. Whereas as animals, insects, we either have an exoskeleton or a spine, or some form of skeletal structure to help keep us in shape and upright. Plants don't have that. If plants had mushy floppy cells like we do as animals, they'd be a green mushy mess on the floor. They wouldn't be able to keep their structure. So they rely very heavily on having a cell wall present. The next thing down is actually on both cells. Okay, plant cells and animal cells have this, and that is a cell membrane. Okay, and the cell membrane is what we call semi-permeable. It has lots and lots and lots of little tiny holes in it. Okay, and they only allow certain things in and out. They won't allow very big molecules, but they allow things like oxygen, glucose, carbon dioxide, and the cell membrane actually has the ability to control what enters and leaves the cell. Some of that can be through natural process of diffusion. Some of it is through other processes which will basically control, like active transport, which will force things a certain way. So if the body needs to get rid of a human, if you needed to get rid of carbon dioxide from your cells after respiration, they will go out of the cell through diffusion into the bloodstream, and they'll be got rid of at the lungs. The next thing down we have is this little blob here, again in both, and that is the nucleus. Okay, now the nucleus is basically the control centre of the cell. It contains the DNA. Now, DNA has various functions. It not only controls things like appearance, it will also control reactions that occur within the cell. It controls things like the making of proteins. Okay. Next down, we have this kind of white space, and that is called the cytoplasm. Okay, and the cytoplasm is like a gel. It's a jelly substance, and it's where things like in animal cells, where things like starches are stored, because they're not soluble, the starches. Equally, it is where a lot of chemical reactions within the cell occur. Okay. Next, we have these little squiggly things, which it's very hard to see on there. I'll draw a bigger version up here. They kind of look like that. Okay. They've got a really, really massive surface area inside them. They've got these like little protrusions, and they are known as mitochondria. Okay, mitochondria have a very special role to play within the cell. They are where respiration occurs, and you need respiration to occur in order to provide you with energy, basically. Respiration is the process by which living things produce the energy they require for other reactions to occur, and to keep themselves alive, basically. So the mitochondria is where that respiration actually occurs. Okay. Then next one we've got is another one which is only in the plant cell. Okay, and that is the vacuole. Okay, and the vacuole in plants, it's sometimes called permanent vacuole. Animal cells can temporarily develop one, and it will go away again. Plants always have one in their plant cells. The purpose of the vacuole is to store what we call cell sap. So whereas with humans we can convert our sugars and store it, plants, although they can convert it, they actually produce a lot more sugar in the sense that they carry out photosynthesis. So they need somewhere to keep all that sugar until they can use it. And one of the places they do that is in the cell sap in the vacuole. Okay. And then the last one we have is another green down here, and that is the chloroplast. Okay, and the chloroplasts are only in plant cells for a very good reason. That is that they contain a green pigment called chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll is where photosynthesis occurs. So obviously we're not green. We don't go and sit in the sunshine and make our own food. We do not have any chloroplasts. We don't have chlorophyll. Plants obviously do require that as part of their life processes, and that is where they are found. Some plant cells will have a much higher concentration of them than others. So if you look, for example, at a root cell, it won't actually have very many at all, if any, because roots are underground. They don't need to photosynthesize. They don't get enough sunlight. Whereas if you looked at, for example, a leaf cell, leaves, particularly right at the top of the leaf, if you were to take a leaf and slice it straight through and then look through the section, the cells nearest the top of the leaf would have a lot more chloroplasts than cells near the bottom, because they're the bit that faces the sunshine. Okay? So that is just a kind of little introduction to different types of cells, kind of general plant and animal. These cells are what we refer to as eukaryotic cells. So that's... And that is down to their classification. When you start looking at classifying living things according to phylum, order, class, genus, species, that sort of thing, you get eukaryotes and prokaryotes. Okay, plant cells, animal cells, okay, they are eukaryotic. They are the cells from things that are classed as eukaryotes. Okay. The one thing I do need to add, and I'm going to add it in red, for those of you tuning in who are year 7s, year 8s, you don't need to worry so much about this one. This bit's mainly for GCSE, because there is one extra part that for GCSE you do need to know, and that is something which is quite often shown looking almost like a little string of beads. I'm just going to change the colour on that so you can actually see it. Can you see the purple? Is purple showing up? Yeah, purple's showing up, that's better. Yeah, it looks like a little string of beads. And you'll see a few of them. They are in plant and animal cells. Okay, and they are ribosomes. Okay, actually, I'm just going to rub that out and go over that. So again, it actually shows up slightly better. They are ribosomes. And for those of you doing GCSE, ribosomes have a very, very important role. They are where protein synthesis occurs. So they are where DNA is used to make short chains of proteins, make amino acids. So they have a very, very important role to play within growth, development, and producing a lot of the essential structures within a cell and within a living organism. Okay, right, so they are the eukaryotic cells. Okay, and what I'm going to do quickly, actually, before I rub that out, is I'm just going to switch over here. And what I have here is a slide pre-done, and that slide is of an onion epidermis. So it's the outer layer of skin from a section of onion. So when you cut an onion, you get like the rings. If you peel the skin, it's a very thin layer of skin, and lay it on a slide, you can get this. Now this, unfortunately, this one came in a kit, hasn't been stained very well. Normally you'd stain them with iodine so that you can see structures within the cell more easily. But this one isn't particularly brilliant, but it gives an idea. You can see enough detail to see, if you look, if you can see where my cursor is up here, top right, you can see these like little, they look like bricks. It's kind of brick layout, some more here. Some bits, the layers are a bit thick, so you can't really see. And if I can move it to that one, again, you can see more over here. They look like little bricks. Those are the individual cells, and the outlines you can see are the cell walls. Okay, so that gives quite a nice example. I have got some others I can show you. So that's the onion epidermis. Let's have a look at this one. This one's quite an effective one. This, oh, I get it in focus, is a cut through of a celery leaf. And what you can see here is you can see the outline, okay, and you can see these little circles around the outside. Okay. And although my microscope's not quite powerful enough to zoom in much further than this, I'm working on getting a more powerful one. What you can see is you can see little holes, and then you can see a much, much denser patch of colour. The little holes and the denser patch of colour are actually the cells that make up the xylem and the phloem, that control water translocation and food transport within the plant. Okay, so they'll be involved in taking sugars made in the leaf away from the leaf. They'll also be involved in supplying water. So that's the celery leaf. Let's see, this is the corn stem. Okay, so again, it's not as clear because it's a much smaller sample, but you can still see the structures. Okay, and this one is the root from a lotus. So again, you can see, let's get it focus. Okay, you can see some of the cellular holes. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of some of those. Right, so moving on. Next thing we need to look at is we need to look at, having done eukaryotic cells, we now need to look at prokaryotic cells. So, let me just clean this. So, we are going to look at prokaryotic cells. So whereas eukaryotic cells are plants, animals, things like that, prokaryotic cells are bacteria mainly. They tend to be single cells. And there are a few other differences. So you find that they are a lot smaller than a eukaryotic cell. Prokaryotic cells are quite small. They don't have a nucleus. It's one of the big differences. They basically have a free loop of DNA. Their DNA is not enclosed within a nucleus. It is just a tangled mess in the cell. They quite often also have an extra small ring of DNA called a plasmid, sometimes more than one. And for those of you doing GCSE, plasmids, very, very useful for genetic engineering. Okay, and bacteria do not contain mitochondria or chloroplasts. They carry out different reactions. So you can get quite a lot of different types of prokaryotic cell. But the generalized version you'll quite often see looks, drawing as I go along here, quite often looks fairly similar to that. Okay, it's not perfect. And then what we will do is, looking at the different parts, this would be the plasmid, okay, which is the small circular loop of DNA that can actually replicate completely independently from other DNA in the cell. This is your free DNA. Okay, quite often found as one, maybe two or three long strands of DNA looped, unlike ours, which is compressed into chromosomes. They tend to just have a big strand. You then have these in some, which are what we call flagella. Okay, they're basically like a tail. They have the ability to wiggle. They also have the ability, in some cases, to twirl to help the bacteria, or in this case, move around. So they're quite useful. And the last thing is similar to a plant. Similar to a plant, they do have a cell wall, okay, which, much like with a plant, because they don't have a skeleton or anything, they are single-celled, it gives them structure. However, with bacteria, it is not a cell wall made of cellulose, which is what it is with a plant. Okay? So that's your structure of your prokaryotic cells. You will get slight variations. Sometimes you'll see pictures or diagrams and they might have what look like little hairs around the outside. You will also see them with maybe little shapes. Okay, some of those are to illustrate antigens on the surface, which is how, if they were to invade an animal or such, that is how the animal would recognise them and work out whether they need to fight it as an invading pathogen, or whether they would need to accept it because it's friendly bacteria and it's not going to cause any harm. So antigens, they're all completely unique to the individual type of bacteria, and that's how the body will recognise it. Again, that sort of thing will be covered when I do, hopefully, one of these sessions on the immune system. Okay, so that pretty much sums up cells, okay, for today. I will be back hopefully about 1:30 this afternoon with a short stream pitch GCSE on covalent bonding. And I've got another one planned for tomorrow morning, which is another key stage 3 and 4 session, looking at forces. I do have GCSE science packs available. Some of you, I'm sure, have already either got them or have already contacted me about them. That's fantastic. If you want one and you haven't got one, send me a message on the Science Mail page with an email address to send it to, and I'll send it through. GCSE's ones are ready to go. Key Stage 3, CS 7 and 8, I'm still finalising the packs, and then they'll be ready to go as well. I'll put a post up when they're done. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you later. Bye.